Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of a Frugal Athlete podcast. Today, we got a very special guest, Mr. Joseph Genovesi. How are you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Nah, thank you for coming on. Obviously, we know each other. We've been able to, work together as people have been listening. Balance Bridge has been our sponsor for the last couple of episodes. They're an amazing company with what they do, working with athletes, helping them in a number of different factors. So we definitely want to hear from the source himself, the founder. Joseph, can you talk about, Balance Bridge and everything that led you up to starting your company?
Sure. Yeah. So I began my career in finance and alternative investments out of college and grad school with a focus on hedge funds. My last stop prior to launching this business, I was at a fund that focused on post-settlement funding in the legal space. And while I was there, I kind of became introduced to different opportunities that were in different industries, but very similar type of trades, one of which being in the athlete space. So around 6 years ago, I decided to launch my own business in this space. And we do a bunch of different things, but all very similar to what we're talking about today. One of the things that we do is make advances to professional athletes against their guaranteed contracts. So giving them access to their future earnings a little bit early if the need arises. We also do free agent advances to players. So players that are entering the last season of their current contract. And we kind of are able to give them access to their future contracts. And then we do some pre-draft loans to players who just finished up their collegiate careers and are preparing for whether it be the NFL or the NBA draft. Right now, those are the two sports where we limit our pre-draft advances to. We just focus on different ways to try to help athletes achieve their financial goals and get access to capital a little bit quicker than they otherwise would.
No, I think that's amazing because I feel like when you see these athletes sign these big deals in over a 5-year period or 10-year period, depending on the sport, 3-year period, they say the amount of the whole contract, but they only get paid for that year. So
Sure.
in light of what you're saying, is they basically can access that contract earlier.
Exactly. And in some of the contracts that you just mentioned, like in a 5-year deal, it might be an escalating contract. So year one, they may make the least amount of money in the 5-year period.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's the numbers can be huge, but the day they sign the contract, they get zero of it, right? Their first paycheck
Mm-hmm.
might not be until the season begins, or they get paid year round in their sport, maybe, a few weeks later, or whenever the new season year begins. So, they might sign that new contract and realize, hey, I now am making all this money. I'd like to buy a house, or maybe they sign a contract with a team in a different city and they need to move. So they might have a need to access some capital before they actually begin receiving it.
No, that's amazing. No, thank you for the explanation because I think it's so important for people to realize like the mechanisms around athletes and contracts and sport and business. And with that being said, for a young athlete, you mentioned pre-contract, pre-draft, loan agreements and stuff like that and advances. Why is that important? People see these young athletes train and, I got to go different teams to meet with coaches and staff and medicals and stuff like that. But why would it be important to get a pre-draft advance?
Sure. So a pre-draft loan could be really important for the player. And again, those loans are, the smallest loans that we do. We're not making
Mm-hmm.
a pre-draft advance to a player to go buy, a multi-million-dollar home.
Yeah.
We're giving him an advance so that he could maybe rent an apartment in a city where he found a trainer that's going to really help him prepare for the combine.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe he wants to get a nutritionist, or just some capital to help him prepare for the draft in his sport. I know that a lot of colleges have great facilities that they can work out there, but they might want to find a specialist. Maybe he's a young quarterback and he wants to go to a quarterback camp, and it's in a different city. He needs to travel there. He needs to get living situation, and pay for the camp itself or pay for the trainer, whatever it might be. So those players, they're collegiate athletes. They have potentially $0 saved in a bank account. So they just need, whatever small advance it is to get themselves in a comfortable situation where they can focus on getting prepared for their draft.
Yeah. And what's the criteria for an athlete to, potentially get something like that? Because obviously you have like the first round potential draft picks, second round.
Sure.
There's like a scale, but how, from your standpoint and their standpoint, looking into like, is there like like a seesaw kind of scale that helps them?
Sure. So what, for us, the pre-draft loans, we limit to just the NBA and NFL for right now. In the
Hmm.
NBA, we try to focus solely on first round projected players because
Okay.
that's they're guaranteed contracts in
Yeah.
the first round. And then for the NFL, we focus on the first 3 rounds for the same reason.
Hmm.
Um, you know, there's players can drop in the draft projections, and we've had situations where a player we thought was going to be a mid to late first rounder, maybe he slips to the second round. In football, we've had guys that we thought were going to be top 3 rounds, they slip to the fourth or fifth. Knock on wood, we've been fortunate that it's worked out. I mean, teams aren't going to waste draft picks, right? So if you pick
Yeah.
a player in the second round, you're planning on him being part of your roster. Maybe you put him in the G League for a season. Maybe you let him stay overseas if he's an international player. But for the most part, teams are not just throwing caution to the wind with the second round pick. There only are 2 rounds. Same thing with the NFL. I mean, if you're drafted in the fourth or fifth round, sixth or even seventh round, the odds are you're going to be on that team's roster, or at least get your fair shake at training camp rosters. So we've been really fortunate with all of our pre-draft loans, but we do focus on the guaranteed money
Okay.
positions.
Oh, perfect. And then like, can you explain like, I remember my rookie year, I had I got drafted to Philadelphia and I was trying to find like an apartment with my roommate and we couldn't get approved anywhere. And
Yep.
why is it so hard for young athletes to get like a loan or get approved for different situations like this?
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we exist, because banks have pretty stringent standards. They have to follow the different rules and guidelines that they're given. So a player who's entering the professional ranks coming out of college, might not have credit. They might not,
Mhm.
have any kind of credit score. A lot of banks require pay stubs, and until you're actually playing, you don't have pay stubs yet. So you can't go get a place to live before the season starts. Um, there's tons of reasons, but
Yeah.
that's pretty much, they all revolve around banks being able to check all the boxes they need to check, and young athletes can't check all those boxes yet because they're not yet making the money.
Yeah, it's crazy, like because like you can tell them like, yo, I'm literally gonna go to the NBA draft. These are the project, and you still won't. You still it's still a
Yep.
difficult situation. So with that being said, obviously, we've been talking about loans and advances, and for the people that may not be privy to what these mean, can you explain like what exactly is a loan, and is there such good thing as like a good loan and versus a bad loan in your line of work?
Sure. So I mean, a loan is just kind of borrowing money that are agreeing to pay back in the future. Our loans are structured that we're advancing you against what we know your cash flows will be from either your
Mhm.
guaranteed or your projected contracts. And yeah, so I mean, they call good debt versus bad debt. So an example of good debt is if you're using the debt or the loan to purchase an asset. So
Mhm.
if you're buying a home, like everyone would consider a mortgage to be good debt because you are, building equity in a home. You have this asset, a physical asset of a home. Other examples could be, any kind of investment. You want to take an advance because you have an investment opportunity that you want to take advantage of, and you need the capital now for that. Um, you know, those are like, some examples of what people consider good debt.
Yeah.
So
I think like the way you explain it, at the end of the day, it's all relative, but you got to make sure that, you do your due diligence and make
yeah.
sure that you have like a solid foundation of what good debt versus bad debt means to you. That leads me to my next question. Like, what are the common mistakes that you see when athletes are choosing to know to borrow?
Well, just making sure you understand, what you're signing. So you want to make sure that you are entering into an agreement that you understand that what the repayment structure is something that you actually can achieve, that you're not setting yourself up to fail and default on
Mhm.
the loan. You want to make sure that, the rates are reasonable. You want to make sure that there's not huge prepayment penalties. I mean, if for the reasons you gave before, if you're unable to get a bank loan right away, you have to try to go find a private entity to give you the loan, like what we do. You want to be able to, whenever a bank is ready to lend to you, to refinance into that cheaper capital source. You don't want to
Yeah.
have to pay penalties by, going to find cheaper capital. You want to make sure that, there's no hidden terms, and just really understand what it is you're signing. And that goes with anything, not
Yeah.
just loan documents. You want to make sure when you're signing your name to something, you understand what that is, and that you can follow all the rules.
No, that's a great point. I think, at the end of the day, you got to read the contract. You got to
Yep.
understand the terminology behind it. I remember, like, even it's a different situation, but like credit cards, APY versus APR, understanding like
Yep.
those different terms can save you the world of difference. When it comes to, you talked about athletes using it for investments, like, and obviously you have history in alternative investments, hedge funds, and different things like that. Can you talk about athletes utilizing future contracts as an asset? Um, how do they do that when it comes to potentially, using a service like yours?
Sure. So I mean, a lot of people, think, wait, why would an athlete need this? They make millions of dollars a year, and there's lots of reasons, right? So an athlete, could be an established athlete, and maybe it's a player who has a guaranteed contract, and he's a few years in, and he still comes to us for an advance because he's already invested his money. Maybe he has it
Hmm.
in different things, and he's just not liquid at this time, and he sees an opportunity, or he wants to move or buy a new home, and he's just not liquid right now. And maybe that athlete could uh, qualify for a traditional mortgage, but maybe he just got traded and he can't wait the 100 days a bank takes to go through their process to give you a traditional mortgage. So he
Hmm.
needs to move this weekend and really wants to buy the home, or he thinks that taking an advance gives him the ability to make a cash offer on a house, which gives him more leverage. He can get a better price on the home. So there's different reasons that an athlete would want to take an advance. Good reasons, like maybe you can make a cash offer on a home and get a better price.
Yeah.
So there's tons of reasons why this subset of people that you wouldn't necessarily think need these advances, there's tons of reasons why, and good reasons that they might want to take an advance.
No, I think that's really important. I love that you explained it that way, because a lot of times, you see athletes and it's like, "Oh, why would they do that? They make millions of dollars, pay everything up front and no debt." But there's different ways to build your financial portfolio using advances, using, credit, using these different mechanisms. And I feel like as we're exposed to more, the more opportunities we have in this lane. So I think it's important that you share that. One question I had, I know we talked offline before I let you go. It's like, when working with people in different financial situations, whether it's a financial advisor, and disclaimer, you're not a financial advisor, so don't come on our podcast saying, Joseph told me I could do that. That's not what we're saying. Uh, I think it's important to understand, like, all right, when you're working with someone when it comes to money management, personal finance, this space, we talked about the balance between like someone you trust and then someone having the credentials. Can you explain that a little bit further and like kind of dive into that?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, like anyone, not just an athlete, when you're looking for a financial advisor or someone to assist you with anything really, you want to make sure that they know what they're doing. If it's like fixing your roof, you want to make sure you're dealing with a roofer who's done it before and they can actually
Mhm.
do a good job. Same thing with your finances. You want to make sure that it's someone who has a track record, has a history. They manage other assets. Someone who's been there before, and they can actually provide you the guidance you're hoping to get. At the same time, you want someone you trust.
Yeah.
And I think, again, I'm not a financial advisor and I don't give advice, but one thing I've noticed that some athletes do, they lean too much on the guy they trust. It might be, someone, maybe they've known for a long time, or a family friend, but that person may not have any experience in wealth management or whatever it is
Yeah.
that they're helping the athlete with. So I think there's got to be a happy balance there of finding someone that you trust, but also can do the job you're asking them to do.
No, thank you. Yeah, I think that's really important. It's all about having a healthy balance. And at the end of the day, it's about results too. So whether it's
Yep.
someone you trust or someone with the credentials, you want to make sure that there's proof in, the job that they're doing. And, whether it's sports or wealth management or any other thing, I think you know, that's what we value success as.
Yep.
The last question before I let you go.
Sure.
You've worked in the wealth management space for a number of years. Is there like, um, in terms of your experience, your research, like things that you've noticed, what makes someone successful in the space? And do you have any advice for any athletes, looking to learn more or looking to build their financial stability? What would that be?
Yeah, I mean, financial literacy is so important, right? I mean, for anyone in any field, like you want to be able to grow wealth, whether your job is being a professional athlete or if you're, you know, any job, right? So you want to make sure that you are saving as much as you can, investing as much as you can, and making the right decisions with your capital. And sometimes that is, using leverage. If you can, borrow money at a certain cost and then reinvest it or invest in something that you think will appreciate over time, and if that makes sense, then that's something you should be doing. And there's tons of places just like you, and your website and your podcast is a great way to learn about financial literacy. And I think more players should be aware of groups like you, and just kind of
Thank you so much.
making that part of your listen. If you're an athlete and you enjoy these three podcasts, they should definitely throw in a financial literacy podcast and just try to learn about everything they can, because growing wealth is so important for anyone. You're not gonna, especially for athletes, you're not going to earn millions of dollars a year forever, right? I mean, like your playing career is, compared to other careers, it's relatively short, and depending on the sport, it could be really short. So you need to make sure that you are, making the most of the money you earn when you're earning it, and make it that work for you forever.
No, I appreciate that. I think that, I mean, that hits the nail on the head. For anyone that wants to connect with you, learn more about, what your organization and company is doing, how can they connect with you? How can they find you? I know we're going to have it in the show notes as well.
Yeah, so our website is balancebridge.com. Please stop by there. You can find all of our contact details on our website. We're on different social media platforms, so please give us a follow. I think you said you will provide that to all the listeners. And yeah, just come to our website. You can find our number, our email address, and come reach out.
No, and then once again, thank you so much, Joseph, for taking the time. I know your schedule is very busy, especially during this football season's back, NBA season's coming up soon. So it really means a lot. And, for anyone that's listening, make sure you guys check them out at the website. It'll be in our show notes, lots of information and some valuable resources if you guys are looking into that space. So once again, appreciate you, and catch you guys next week.
Great. Thank you.
No, most definitely.